I'm going to call up in just a minute Dave Lee, who's on our leadership team. He and Kay, along with Kyle and Nancy and John and Whitney and Ray and Rachel. But Dave will give the report. But I want to give a little bit of context so you understand his report. I told some of our story a little bit to some of you all walking in this morning. This church started almost 3 years ago, but 9 years ago, actually, 2015, I was in a workshop, and they asked the question, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And within about 30 seconds, the thing that I wrote down was, I think I'd start a brewery and launch a church out of it. And that answer was a product, I hadn't really thought about it, but it was a product over, my background is growing up in church. My dad was a pastor. As I was leaving for college, we had a meltdown in our church, and it was a bad, painful, hard experience. And I went away to college in incredible rebellion towards God. I would have said, I hate God, I hate church, I'm never going back. Moved to Atlanta from Florida. And, my story is I was running as far from God as I could go, and I ended up running into God. And when that happened, I felt like God was also saying to me, and I was thinking, this is why I haven't known what to do with my life, because I haven't been walking with God. And now that he's come and I'm walking with God, maybe he wants to do something with me in ministry. And maybe he wants to use the hurt and the brokenness that I experienced in church to help bring healing to other people that have experienced hurt and brokenness in church and religion, in order to help communicate the true message, the goodness of God, the grace of God, that while we were sinners, Christ died for us and didn't leave us there. He made us friends of God and adopted us as his kids. And so had started meeting around a bonfire in my neighborhood, did that for about 15 years with guys who kind of fit that boat. They had bad experiences with religion, bad experiences with church, but they were open to God. They were interested in God. And through that, I guess the idea came about starting a brewery and launching a church out of it. Well, when that happened, I went to the city of Sugar Hill where we live, and they said, well, we got a guy you might want to talk to, Wayne Baxter. He's a backyard brewer from Snellville, Georgia. He's got a dream to start a brewery. We've been talking to him, so Wayne and I connected. We had lunch. He found this spot a few years later, not too far from where we live, and he was looking for investors, and so I helped him find some investors, and we just wanted to support what he was doing. The thing I haven't mentioned yet is that I didn't want to start a church because of fear and insecurity. God was using me in ministry, but I was terrified to do this until I had a meeting with the church that I was on staff at out of the blue, and they said, what do you think about starting a church in Sugar Hill? And I knew that God had cornered me and that's what I was supposed to do. And he gave me an enthusiasm for that as well. So this church launched on Easter of 2021, and God has just caused me to be absolutely dependent on every single step, because I am so aware of my insecurity. I'm so aware of my weaknesses. And God, it's by your Spirit that's going to do this. It's not me. And it gave me confidence in this because I knew he was calling me. It wasn't me. I wasn't trying to make anything happen. But it was God, and we knew it. And as our leadership team came together, and you've heard over and over, we just said, we just want to follow God. We're just trying to follow the breadcrumbs that he lays down. And some of those breadcrumbs over the last 20 years of relationships, just relationship here, relationship here, relationship here, relationship here. When this church started, it's like Joseph's story. We began to see a bigger picture that God is doing something bigger in establishing these relationships. He's bringing them all together. And every person that's involved, there's a strategic piece of something bigger that God is doing. And that involves 25 acres of property in Sugar Hill that we just refer to as Hillside. It's the little street to go up there is Hillside Farm Road. And it's like North Georgia mountains. It's beautiful. And Dave's going to talk about that. But we became friends through God's providence with the family that owns that property. And part of the dream that we had at the beginning was not just to stay in a brewery. Our intention, God may have us here for 20 years. I don't know. It's not our intention to end here. We'd always love to have a presence at Monkey Wrench. We think this is just a great opportunity to meet and connect with people. But we'd love, the dream and vision is to have a space that could be used for weddings, for events, a for-profit business, which Dave will talk about a little bit, that generates revenue and income for ministry. And it's kingdom-minded. And so God's been doing stuff there. And I'll go ahead and call Dave up, and he can sort of take it from there and give a little bit of an update on where things are in that endeavor.
Ray and I didn't plan the sermon or the timing of the devotion, but talking about a dreamer and God's plans, and that's really kind of what this announcement's all about. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? So I read something recently that daydreaming is very healthy mentally and emotionally. That may be true, but let's give it a try here in just a minute. You're probably all aware of Walt Disney. Disney was probably one of the greatest dreamers of our age. And he imagined and dreamed and built a magic kingdom. What if we imagined even grander dream that reflects the very majesty of God's kingdom right here on earth? So imagine with me for just a minute. Our church gathering, just like today, in a stunning, beautiful setting on that hillside, coming together in a building that looks probably more like a mountain lodge than a church. The kind of place that when people walk up for the first time, they think, this doesn't really look like how I thought a church would look. People who come to that hillside would encounter God, encounter his people, and sense the very glory of God. Imagine a building that is surrounded by giant oak trees. It's a place where people could come on Sunday to worship, and on Friday and Saturday there's weddings. People are celebrating, having a reception in that building. And it's a setting that reflects the beauty and significance the marriage of a marriage and a wedding. Just maybe there's a traditional chapel there for people who want that kind of multi-purpose structures. Imagine during the week that the community and ministries are coming together to celebrate, to work, and to serve others in a wide variety of ways. We've had dreams of ministries probably up in the 20s as far as different ideas of ministries that could be served on the property. Imagine a garden, and this is one of my most exciting things, a garden that looks somewhat like how you'd imagine the Garden of Gethsemane, where people could walk and talk and pray with Jesus. So imagine a hillside that's devoted to bringing the kingdom of God to our community in the way that draws the lost into an encounter and then a relationship with God, and those who know him and are believers could draw into a deeper, more intimate relationship with him. Get an idea? A little bit of what I'm talking about? Imagination could run wild. Well, we think we know this place, and we think God might be leading us to make this dream a reality. To make a long story really short, as Drew mentioned, and we could talk for quite a while about all the different stories, how God seems to be pulling people together. But the scope and complexity of building this property and this building, it's kind of overwhelming. But when you consider the number of random connections and relationships that God seems to be orchestrating, it's just impossible to ignore. Again, it would take a long time to explain that, so I'll leave that to Drew because he's much better at that creative thing than I am. But I wanted to bring you a little bit of an update on what's been going on and what we're doing right now. So you can imagine there's a lot of due diligence that goes into a project of this complexity and depth. So we're building a development team of professionals in a wide variety of areas, an accountant, an architect, an attorney, engineers, real estate developer, and contractors. We've established an operating budget for the venue. We're developing a budget for developing the property and building the buildings. We have a very close relationship with a couple who owns and operates a very successful event venue that's very similar to this, what we're thinking. We've already started a working relationship with a very talented architectural firm on a preliminary design, which I think it may have been one of the slides. We've already met with city officials about their requirements in permitting, rezoning, and we've begun to identify some potential investors. So obviously a critical factor and such an endeavor, how are you going to pay for it? So this would be a multi-million-dollar development. So we need to identify a few investors that share a very common vision, who are willing to commit and invest at a pretty significant scale. So we're still very early in the planning stages. Our plan right now is to create a for-profit business centered around the venue, as Drew mentioned. The revenues from that venue would pay for everything else, the church, the ministries, and everything. The vision for this for-profit business would operate hand in hand with the church and all the ministries, very similar to how we work with Monkey Wrench now, but a much deeper relationship, much deeper partnership. Because the whole purpose, the whole development is for God's kingdom. So our church we won't own it or operate it. Although Good News Church would have the preponderance of influence in how the venue is used and everything that goes on. So one of the primary reasons for making this announcement now and bringing this up is we need your help. We need your help with prayer. You may have heard of Randy Pope. He's the founder and longtime pastor of Perimeter Church. And one of his mentors taught him something about when you're pursuing a dream. You may have heard this quote: attempt something so great for God that it's doomed to failure unless God be in it. This qualifies, no doubt. So here's what we'd like you to pray for. Because for this to succeed and to be realized, it just must be God's will, God's way, God's plan, God's timing, and for God's glory. So please pray for God's wisdom to guide us and to keep us in the very center of His will and in His timing. We want to fall behind. We don't want to get ahead of Him. Without it, we're doomed to fail. There's no question. But if we earnestly seek Him in this, and no matter what we're doing, everything will turn out okay. So please pray that God will open and close doors to lead us where to go and what to do and what not to do. Pray that God will continue to assemble His people for a team to make the dream a reality. A team of kingdom-minded, God-honoring servants, humble and full of integrity. And pray that God will purify the hearts and motives of everyone involved to protect us from ourselves, from our sin nature, the enemy. The enemy is not going to want a place like this in our community. So pray that God will raise up the funds to build this dream through a small group of investors that, again, are like-minded and committed to a kingdom perspective. So that's all I got. Hopefully that's enough to give you a taste of what we're talking about. I don't know if you want to open for questions or...
I think what we'll do, just for the sake of time, is if you have questions, Dave and I will be around. You've got his phone number there. And my phone number is on my card at the back table. You can call or text either one of us. We'd be happy to answer questions. I know there are probably a lot. But I will just say, some of what Dave said, the pieces that I referred to, there's a couple that we've already identified who is interested in running this event space, that has done it for years. They've been very successful at it. We have a property owner family that wants to sell it to us. We've got, there's the idea of a piece of having a microbrewery on site that could be a gathering place for the community, a coffee roastery. We have those people who know how to do that, who've said, we can help you do that. They've given us all the information. We have all the detailed information. We have investors. We have builders. Dave's a builder. He's a builder. Kyle Drake is a builder. We have interior design. We have artists. We have, God's assembled all. It may not happen. It's possible that's not his plan, but it sure looks like he wants to do something like this. So to Dave's point, we ask you to pray, and we'll put these details and the prayer requests out there so we can do that. And I know there's a prayer time next week at Jason and Marnie's house. It'd be a great time to pray for these things, and we'll continue to pray. And if you're somebody that says, I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to be a part of the investment team. It's a significant investment. It's a significant project, but you can talk to Dave about that. Or if you know somebody that's kingdom-minded that you think would be interested in, then talk to Dave as well. But it is exciting to see the path that God has us on. And again, we're just following the breadcrumbs. And so far, he's been just incredible in his leading us.